narrow, long, thin lots. And what we did was we bulked up the ownership into what we called bubble zones. We started at the river or at the Anasis East End, and we had 4 bubble zones all the way along, right down to the end of Tilbury Industrial Area, and put the owners together to talk about trying to do some consolidation or to put together some type of agreement amongst themselves so they could look at their properties as a whole, and perhaps one whole block as opposed to maybe 8 or 10 small individual little lots. One of the big reasons for that was the environmental ministry had come to us. We have a lot of bad demolition sites along here, and we won't go into the history of that, but the environment minister wanted those sites closed. And that's in the process now. We worked very, very hard for about 4 years trying to make that happen, but obviously you have to have the cooperation of the owners of the land. But we really wanted to try to do that and thought it was a good idea, mainly because if you bulk the lots together, number one, they're much more saleable, number two, they're much more valuable as a result, and one very important factor from the environmental point of view was that you could bulk together an environmental system for each of the pods. So we've been working along on this for a long time, and I appreciate everyone turning out today, because we do have a very ambitious vision and revitalizing and recreating River Road Industrial Area. It's a part of all of us, and it needs a lot of work together. But with the help of the Chamber and your individual help, I know that we can put Delta on the map as a regional leader in brownfield revitalization, sustainable development, and sustainable business operations. And as I mentioned, the supply of industrial land is diminishing very, very rapidly. A lot of the municipalities are converting lands to condominiums, high-rises, and all kinds of other things, and it's making it more and more difficult to have an industrial area. This is one of the biggest ones and the largest opportunity in the entire 2,300 acres or hectares of the regional district. Right here, we're sitting right on it. Tremendous, tremendous opportunities here. The regional planners, of course, are quite concerned about this, and that's why we're looking at the regional growth strategy, because they're predicting over 1 million more people are going to be living here in Vancouver by 2040. And there's a push now by the region to recognize industrial areas as a base for employment and services that will serve this growing population. So this puts us in a very good position here in Delta, as I said. And if we hold true to the belief that we had back in 2004, 2005, and saving these industrial lands for industrial purposes, we are going to really create a wonderful economic and employment base here for Delta. Having the port and South Fraser Perimeter Road in the area is really going to cement those positions, and we have to plan correctly for the capitalization of these aspects.
So this is our River Road industrial area, stretching from Tilbury basically over to Nordell. We're talking about approximately 500 acres of potential industrial land in this area. So as Mayor Jackson mentioned, regionally that's a pretty significant chunk, and it's again a piece that we really need to advance not only the planning work, but ultimately we need to grease the skids so that industrial development does happen here. And what we've found regionally is as industrial land becomes in more and more short supply, the price goes up, and we have a lot of industries fleeing out to places like Chilliwack and others, and you're probably more familiar with that than I am. But it doesn't bode well long term for our economic development if that continues to happen. Just a few kind of fun facts about taxation and what it means to Delta from an industrial perspective. An undeveloped industrial lot that's perhaps maybe used for container storage or some other kind of use, 10 acres might generally generate about $90,000 taxes annually to Delta. One that's fully developed, similar size, over $400,000 annually. And taxes. And industrial development does take up or contribute quite a big slice of the tax pie in Delta, and it helps us keep residential taxes down. Right now, the residential component is about 55%, and the industry contributes about 12%, and we'd like to increase that industrial component and be perhaps a little bit like some of the other municipalities that enjoy a healthy industrial sector within their municipalities. As Mayor Jackson mentioned, we've divvied it up into these bubble zones. We felt that attacking a plan or taking on a plan for the whole of the area all at once would be a bit too much for us to bite off for a number of reasons. It's a big area. There's very, very many landowners involved here, and it's good to sort of break it up into its component bits and get everybody in the room and discuss about proceeding on an area by area basis. And we've been focusing in on what we call Zone C. The planning principles that have been endorsed in this particular initiative retain industrial land for industrial purposes. We don't want to be introducing a whole lot of commercial uses that will outcompete industrial, and that's a pattern that actually has been repeated throughout the region, and industrial land goes for a lot less than commercial land, and it will, commercial uses will outbid industrial every time, so we need to very clearly in our planning policies elaborate that they are for industrial purposes. We have to address the landfills, as I mentioned. We have to aim for the highest and best use in terms of jobs, economic growth, and diversity, and we have to protect the environment. What is eco-industrial development? It sounds a little bit like a buzzword, and if you do an internet search on it, you'll actually find that there's a lot of examples of eco-industrial developments throughout the world. There's a number that are underway in the prairies. Spruce Grove has one, I believe, that's under development. And there's another one in Saskatchewan, and there's others sprinkled throughout the globe. And it's not just applying rigorous green building conditions on industrial development. In other words, another way of making industrial development really, really expensive to do. It goes beyond that. It's not just about land use. It's about using land more efficiently. It's about shared services and the integration of the industrial activities that happen in particular areas. And we have some examples of that here in Tilbury, in fact, where one outfit's products or waste are taken by another in the same area, and that creates some real efficiencies in terms of operations and helps to increase business competitiveness. So that's part of it, as well as the various environmental components of it. The benefits of eco-industrial developments, obviously it helps to protect the industrial land base, minimizes infrastructure investment because of those efficiencies that I just mentioned. It helps to attract very kind of high-end industrial activities and high-end jobs, meeting our broader economic and environmental objectives. And finally, it helps us to create a sustainable community with industry and not in spite of it. Once the SFPR is built, we're looking at traffic volumes on River Road, this is east of the Buckingham site, being reduced by 50% from today's traffic levels. So that's a huge reduction. It's going to move a lot of traffic onto South Fraser Perimeter Road, and really negates the necessity of doing huge road upgrades to River Road, excepting for the ones that are already planned and local improvements and so on. That will access between future development and Tilbury can be staged. We're looking at internal access being accommodated within future developments, as opposed to going out there and building a big expensive road from one end to the other at this point. As Mayor Jackson pointed out, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway is a barrier. It bisects all of the properties north and south, and we're going to have to deal with that. We've been talking to BNSF for a number of years now. We're trying to convince them now that there's actually quite an economic development opportunity for them. This is a bit of a back spur that they don't really think too much about, but we see the potential there for industrial development that will take advantage of that rail spur. And we're trying to convince the NSF that this is all a good thing, that you should be working with us in terms of not only securing rail crossings, but perhaps some additional spurs into future business development sites.